All right.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Gihan is joining. Okay. Okay, folks. I started recording just for your information. Are we waiting for anybody else from team Susphishus? Are there any team members that we're still waiting for, or is everybody here?
I think we're waiting for Berenice.
Berenice,
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's give her.
We tried calling earlier in the Teams meeting and looks like she was having issues with her camera. So I'm actually going to message her right now, actually.
Okay, she's here.
Oh, there she
Yeah,
is.
she's
Perfect.
joining. Perfect.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Berenice. Thank you for joining us. We'll kick off the meeting. Sort out your issue with video when you can, if you can. But if you can't, it's don't worry about it too much. But it'll be good to see you in person. I will. There is some noise on the line. If you're not talking, maybe put yourself on mute. Right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Eugene Levin. I'm the competition organizer. Thank you for participation in this competition. Congratulations on making to the finish line, making it to the top 3. All of the judges were very impressed with your presentation, right? So today we are just going to ask you a few questions about this case study, about your recommendation, right? And then we will evaluate your performance during the interview, and we are hoping to get back to you within, hopefully less than a week with the final results. As I said before, all of you are winners. It doesn't matter if you're going to get first place or second or third, you will, get scholarships from the chapter. But good luck with your interview today, and let's kick it off. So, all of the judges, maybe if you can just quickly introduce yourself before asking your questions, and we'll start with Alex.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi, Team Suspicious team, and congratulations to get there. Don't listen to Eugene. It does matter if you're first or the third place, so just to aim for the winning. My name is Alex Baza. I'm a Chief Information Security Officer for Align Communications, where MSP serving financial institution in New York City and across the globe. And I'm also board of the director of ISACA New York chapter. So we'd like to structure this conversation as we saw your presentations, and again, thank you for submitting. Very impressive. Let's presume we are the board of the company, and we would like to ask you what happens and what do you think we should do next. We're seeking your advice in the situation, and we'll evaluate it. So give us please brief overview. How did we get there? What happens, and maybe brief analysis what happened so far, if you can.
Of course. Okay. Hi, my name is Byron Chow. I'd like to thank the judges for being here today and taking their time out of their Sunday. So basically what happened was Pharmaco suffered, I believe, four breaches. First one being ransomware attack, and the second one being the email theft, and then third one being public health information theft, which was some of that public health information, and the fourth one being a major data breach of 200,000 records. And then recently we had Inject 5, where we found out that there was a breach in the website server, and that led to the hackers infiltrating from that method. Sakshi, you want to add more? Sorry.
Yeah, what do you think? It was like individual events, or it was of their all coordinated effort to bring the company down? And what do you think went wrong? How did the company react for the first incident when they discovered the ransomware?
Personally, I feel like the company maybe kind of wasn't really prioritizing security, and they kind of just brushed it off. And I think the C-suite, some of the C-suite board of directors also maybe like wasn't prioritizing security and wasn't taking it as seriously as they should have, and they just kind of just brushed it off and wanted to proceed with the merger.
Yeah, but okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, adding on what Byron said, their security action after the data breach and specifically with the ransomware attack is they just wanted to give in and pay the money. And based on our approach, that's not something that our beliefs that we align with. So, based on like the company cybersecurity and the communication between like the C-suite, it was not as effective as we would consult them to be.
Why would you think it's paying 25K? It's not the best approach. I mean, 25K is not the big amount of money compared to the merger, compared to the money at stake, and it seems to be a reasonable effort to recover relatively quickly.
I think so, but also with ransomware attacks, you never know how much of your information and data you're going to get back. So you can't fully trust the person that you're working with during a ransomware attack. And also just like the public image of the company. If people find out and news leaks that the company automatically just gave in to paying the ransomware, people might think, oh, like where were their cybersecurity measures? How come they didn't negotiate at all? And just whereabouts about like how important and effective the cybersecurity within the firm is would just be prominent. Other companies such as like Apple, when they had like data breaches, you wouldn't hear about them paying ransomware because you would just assume that their cybersecurity is as effective where they don't have to like pay someone else. So it just kind of lets other users know that like a third party has better cybersecurity and is able to infiltrate the system. So that's why we don't think that necessarily like paying it right off the bat would be a smart approach.
And
Okay,
to add
thank
on
you.
to what,
Yeah.
sorry, to add on to
Go
what
ahead, go
Sakshi
ahead.
said, additionally, we're dealing with criminals here, so they're not necessarily known for having like their reputation or anything like that. So not necessarily going to pay out the ransomware payment or release the information or give back the information. They may even ask for more. Or if you do pay and it does get out, it makes you look like, oh, okay, this company pays out their ransomware, so maybe we should target them even more for other ransomware gangs.
Okay, thank you. So again, so far for previous incident, it seems to be they were alarming and escalating, but the company looked like the board of directors seems it's not the end of the world and continue pushing for the merger. So right now we have a fifth event, and I think Steven wants to dig a little bit deeper into what happened at what's the latest development on the case.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, I'm Stephen Hochberg with Protivity, Associate Director, focusing on cybersecurity, auditing, and risk. So thank you guys for being here. Congratulations again on making it this far. So maybe you can start with just a brief, provide your understanding of the fifth inject, and what you read and how you synthesize that information, and what different technical recommendations would you have for the company to implement based on that new information?
So I'll start off. So from what I understood from the Inject 5, basically what happened was this was 2 weeks after the incident, and they had the CERT team look more into the breach. And what they found was that Pharmaco actually outsourced their website hosting to a third-party provider. And what happened was that third-party provider didn't have their anti-malware updated properly, so which allowed hackers to get in through that way. And what we would recommend is that to have proper network segmentation. And I don't think the customer data should have been breached if they had proper network segmentation, meaning that like internet-facing servers should have been separated from the user servers, and they should have been separated from the admin accounts, and those should have been separated from the user data servers as well. So proper network segmentation to prevent the attackers from moving laterally within the network after they got in would have been very essential.
I agree that that could have been useful. I think one of the pieces that was mentioned was around patching, specifically patching the web facing interface, and I think that's something that the malware anti-malware may I mean maybe it'll be able to pick up, maybe not, but most of the patches that security companies are pushing out tend to be a little bit more proactive maybe than some of the anti-malware antivirus or organizations. So I think that's one piece. The segmentation component that you brought up is interesting as well, though it's maybe worth mentioning or reiterating that this breach was impacted on a separated third party, which was already logically separate from our Pharmaco's network. So, what would your considerations, given that, how would that impact maybe what you would think from the Pharmaco perspective, from a technical recommendation standpoint? And technical, I suppose I can mean not just technology, but information security in general.
Does anybody else want to take this? I'm not too sure.
Do you mind reiterating the question?
Right. So technical recommendations, right? So we're thinking about a breach that happened at a third party, but unfortunately, Pharmaco was impacted. So of course, there's recommendations that you may have for that third party, which is where we're talking about anti-malware, antivirus, and network segmentation, server hardening, etc. But that doesn't necessarily explain how Pharmaco would have to adapt from a technical or infosec perspective.
Yeah, I would say that just increasing like cybersecurity measures within the organization coming down to their software would be essential too. So developing like DevSecOps within their software as well, just so their software itself and their infrastructure stays protected. That would be one of the approaches. And if anyone else wants to like add on, you can go ahead.
Maybe like proper firewalls and security controls in place to prevent the threat actors from moving laterally around the network after they've gone through the third party and into Pharmaco's database servers.
Okay, and thank you. And how would Inject 5 overall impact your recommendation to continue with the merger?
I can start with this. So we would still recommend going through with the merger, but instead of maybe a merger, we would recommend maybe like a buyout or something of that kind, because I don't believe the share price would be as equal, so it wouldn't be necessarily a merger at that point. But it's important to keep in mind that Pharmaco does provide painkiller injectables, I believe, and PharmaQuire provides the swallowable versions of the painkillers. And these are essential products, and I believe they're inelastic, meaning consumers still need them for life-saving and or life-sustaining purposes. So it's not necessarily like, it's something essential for consumers, so I don't think they will just move on to a different brand. But it's more to keep in mind to do a root cause analysis on what data has been taken and what data has been breached, meaning like if Pharmaco's secret formula for the painkillers has been part of the data breach, then it's important to keep in mind, maybe renegotiate from there. But first do root cause analysis and then determine whether or not to go through with the buyout or anything like that.
All right, so with that, I think we're going to get into some potential legal implications. I don't know if Barry or David may be taking this one.
Sure. So David Chang here, one of the infrastructure and cybersecurity auditor for MUFG, another name for Bank of Tokyo. I'm also the New Jersey chapter academic relation chair. So I have a question more related to kind of a legal implication, especially before merger and also post merger, if this actually goes through, or as Brian say, a buyout. Okay, one way or the other. Now, Brian, you have indicating that there are 4 bridges for the Inject 5, and you indicating that we may not know what information actually get leaked out. For example, would be health information or the secret formula, that as you put it. What what do you think about the implication in terms of legal perspective? What law that may have been broken, and how the how they affect your recommendation for merger or buyout?
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily, and I'll take the legal implications. So, a security breach is obviously very devastating for businesses, organizations, and anyone who is breached all around. So, I did very detailed research on different laws. So, for Inject 5, I think the HIPAA Act was very it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. So this is basically a federal law that requires, if sensitive information is leaked, that it has to be basically notified to patients that were affected, and they have to be, put to their knowledge of, this happened and why this happened. So the General Data Protection Regulation, it's the GDPR Act law. It's more of a EU law, which is the United Nation, the European Economic Area. So this basically is also important for people outside of the U.S. also who could have been affected, and if they were outside. So both laws are very important and could have be used in the effect of this breach.
Okay,
And-
understand. Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
And to add on to what Emily, no, that's right. And to add on to what Emily said, it's important to keep in mind that to be also wary of lawsuits that are ongoing, because that could affect the share price of the company. Because if anyone goes into a class action or individual people are suing, that could, I think, impact Pharmaco's maybe assets, because they have to pay out, or these lawyers, and they have to pay out how much data, the money they pay out to the customers, and also providing security solutions like credit monitoring or anything like that. So it's important, in fact, that's also part of the merger price negotiating or buyout price negotiating.
Understand. Good. Thank you. Emily and Brian, let me ask you.
Wait. I think you don't have something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
also the malware, given the fact that the malware had also infected all the data center operations, as a result, Pharmaco was unable to ship products for the previous 24 years, for the previous 24 hours. So company's reputation was suffering in both social and mainstream media, and several lawsuits had been filed. So with regulators contemplating fines and other disciplinary actions. So the CEO was obliged to shut down Pharmaco's information system and continue operations for only vital medicine, shipping them manually, and also dealing with customers one-on-one basis. So he has also been begging for forgiveness for the interruption and promising to fix it as soon as possible.
Okay, good. Now, the second question more related to another legal implication perspective. So usually, merger and acquisition information should be protected, right? So to avoid insider trading or inappropriate trading, fund running, and those kind of things. Now, since we, Brian, as you put it, that we don't know what information actually got leaked out, What is your analysis in terms of the legal implication by the government, like SEC perspective, as well as do you still recommend a merger or buyout based on the information that you do not know?
As is anytime there's information we don't know, it's hard to recommend. I guess we would need more information on the subject. That's why it's important to do the root cause analysis to find out what has been breached and what has been accessed. This way you can make like a further decision. But with the information I have now, I would recommend going through with the merger because as they mentioned at the end of Inject 5, I do believe they said something about Pharmaco needing to be either the company's going to die or it's going to get acquired and move on from there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Uh,
to quickly add on to that, you know, it is important to take into consideration that breaches happen all the time, and there really isn't like an extent to how bad or how little it could be. So, you know, being defeated by a breach and like stopping some kind of, you know, potential partnership or something like that, you know, I don't think it's in the better, you know, effect of us, like as Pharmaco. I feel like it would be really potential, like a good, you know, opportunity for us to merge and for another company to merge with us. Because again, how Brian mentioned, you know, what Pharmaco provides is something that people do need, and it's something that's going to continue on. So, yeah, I definitely think the breach should still continue.
Okay. So with that said, what would you do to legally protect the buying company? What would you recommend to do?
Well, there's obviously going to be contracts involved and, you know, obviously legal implications. There is an extent of what can be done to protect the other company. So the other company could protect itself legally, of course, and in the case of a breach, again with like contracts and, you know, there's liabilities that could be put into place if they are affected. But again, um, other companies are also aware of the fact that, you know, there is a the company would be in mind of the fact that there was a breach. So that is obviously their call to continue the merge as well. So you know, that's kind of what can be put forth. You know, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah, go ahead, Diodang.
So as a general recommendations for protecting a company's security, we could suggest to add on to what my colleague said, to implement strong passwords policies. We recommend to update software and security system. We suggest to train employee on cybersecurity best practices and also to conduct regular security audit.
Great. Good.
Before we move away from legal questions into to Radhika's question, I was just wondering, Barry, do you have any other legal related questions that you want to follow up with?
Yeah. So besides notification requirements that you discussed and remediation requirements, what can you tell us a little bit more about what the regulations that apply to Pharmaco actually required of them, and in what ways they may or may not have been violated, both before the breach and potentially subsequent to the breach?
As in regulations, do you mean kind of like what is required of Pharmaco to its clients and its other, you know, vendors, or as in kind of like its own, like against them from a cyber criminal who affected them?
The former.
Like towards them, right? Okay. So, well, obviously people are protected who do, you know, use Pharmaco, and that's, you know, their idea. Like they should feel protected as consumers, customers, and even, you know, partners, that they have, you know, the legal, you know, protection. So for them, it's kind of like They should be allowed, you know, give me 1 second. Byron, do you want to take over while I get my thoughts together?
Can you clarify what you mean by that, Ben?
So you were discussing how, among other things, with HIPAA and the GDPR violations, required notification to the affected parties. Besides notification, what other requirements may there have been pursuant to those regulations or other regulations and laws that may have been applicable either before the breach or after the breach? And what is one thing that you would have, before the breach, advised them to do differently, if any, from a legal perspective?
I think there is a law where anytime there's a breach, I don't know like verbatim, but I believe anytime there's a breach, the company is like required to, by the government, to disclose the information and who's been affected to their clients. So definitely that after the breach has occurred. As for before the breach occurred, the customer, I believe companies are still required to like protect their information according to HIPAA, and they have to keep it like encrypted and private, which I don't think Pharmaco did. I think they had it in, I'm not sure if it was plain text, but it was partially obfuscated, but not fully encrypted.
Okay, that's a great point. You done?
To add on to that, we can also recommend to hire legal consultant and cybersecurity expert to determine the most appropriate legal measures for the specific security of the company's need.
And adding on to what he said, I also think that it would be important to conduct a due diligence test. So like before like acquiring the company, they should conduct thorough like due diligence to like investigate the target company and just making sure that they make an informed decision about like the share prices.
Yeah, I also think it's important to mention that there's like things involved such as like identity fraud, computer trespass and computer invasion of privacy and computer forgery. So that's kind of in the effect of also of the criminals who did you know, commit the crime, obviously. And then going back to the GDPR, that was also important again if there's like people from the European nation. And then again, I was going to talk about the California Privacy Protection Law. So this is actually could come into great effect because it's a generally new law and it targets personal information. So including like things like social security numbers, account logins, and financial information. So obviously not all information is protected by law. So like public records wouldn't be covered by that. But the benefits it grants California residents like even more protection. So that is also something that could be relevant.
One more legal question. Great answers, by the way. What is the scope of the potential liability if the merger does go through towards the acquiring company? Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
The scope of the potential liability for the acquiring company. So if the merger does go through, as initially proposed, you guys had some creative ideas about potentially doing an acquisition instead of a merger, potentially acquiring the assets, which could shield the liability for the acquiring company. But if the merger goes through as initially proposed, what is the potential scope of liability for the acquiring company?
I think if Pharmacare was to acquire Pharmaco, or to merge rather, they would be responsible for the customers, and they would be like still be sued by the data that's been breached by them because they did acquire the company. So they have to take like the good with the bad, I guess.
Yeah, and regarding assets, they can form an asset purchase agreement as well.
Yeah, to kind of add on to that as well, if a merging company knows about the breach like prior to the merger, they're still held liable for the damages resulting of the breach, obviously. So this could possibly like include failure to conduct proper due diligence just because of like the failure of, disclosure of the breach if they don't mention it, but obviously they like will. So if the merging company didn't know about the breach, the merger, they're still obviously like going to be held liable, but if they're not, then they wouldn't be held liable. So they shouldn't really have any worries of that affecting them legally because it wasn't them and they weren't merged with us when it was like their, you know, breach. So yeah.
Okay, all right. So sounds good. So let's move on to Radhika's question.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Radhika Bajpai, Technology and Risk Management Cybersecurity Executive in FinTech space here in New York. First of all, congratulations to the team. I think it is really great to see all of you here today. You've done like a lot of hard work into this clearly. And so far, based on this discussion, it clearly shows how incidents and events like this bring in different players together, right? Like people from technology expertise perspective, legal expertise perspective, and everything, because ultimately, collectively, the entire team and the organization has to reach the success. So my question is around recommendations. I know you all went through this whole case study and provided a lot of different recommendations in terms of technical and non-technical aspects. And as you can imagine, every organization, no matter how big or small it is, has a budget to adhere to, right? Like not everything can be done on day one. So my question is around like if your team has to pick top 2 or 3 recommendations overall in technical and non-technical spaces together, what would they be? And if you can provide like a little bit more rationale around why you picked those 2 or 3.
Okay, I can start. So we actually did discuss in many sessions that we all joined together about like recommendations and what we think that Pharmaco should do in the case of a breach. So obviously, this is something that takes over kind of people, individuals who have been affected, their personal and sensitive data. So we think that it's really important that communication is so important, and we think that it's something that's, being able to be not just vulnerable with our customers and our, partnerships, but being able to kind of, you know, be honest and kind of give initiative of like, okay, this won't happen. We're going to try for it to not happen again. But obviously, breaches are something that aren't completely unstoppable as, the world continues to evolve and technology is a matter of something that continuously is, getting better. And, with that, cyber criminals are also, improving their ways and finding out new ways to kind of figure out how to breach a company. So with that being said, as we, continue, we kind of have to be able to communicate to our customers in case of something that happens. And I think that's a really important step. So I'm going to let another colleague discuss another important.
Yeah, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Berenice. I'd also say that a really good recommendation would be to have a breach response plan. Pharmaco did have their breach response plan was actually really weak. They had their security measures in place, but they were not ready in case their security was taken. They had their budget planned out, but they weren't really, those 2 steps ahead of making sure how they would distribute the budget and in case of what other scenario. So I would really say transparent communication and transparency with each other is vital, as well as developing their breach response plan.
And to add on to what my colleagues said, you're definitely right. There's always budgetary constraints. Even here, the CISO was referring to CFO, and maybe the CFO was trying to meet budgetary constraints. And then in our field of cybersecurity, it feels like almost like insurance almost. And the best case scenario is nothing happening. So it's hard for maybe C-suite executives or board directors to understand the importance of cybersecurity, and they might not understand the impact of a data breach or anything that's happening. So it's important to help them visualize with like numbers, how much it would cost per breach, and then how much it would cost for something like a pen test, right? I mean, a full pen test, if we're trying to meet budgetary constraints, could be like maybe 20, 30, 50K for like a complete pen test to find like everything that's wrong with your system. So I definitely recommend that to start off with. And another thing is just to keep your antivirus and anti-malware updated, and just have the proper segmentations and firewalls in place.
Great, thank you. I will, I guess in the interest of time, pass it on to Gehan.
Thanks, Radhika. Hi, folks. Thanks for this opportunity to be here. Team, I hope you look at this as great practice for the real world, because when you do presentations, people are going to ask you all sorts of weird questions that you didn't anticipate, or you're like, what are they asking? And sometimes asking us to repeat the question is a very smart move. Right? Listen, without taking up more space, I work for CVS Health. I lead the INAM practice for them. I've been very fortunate to be involved with this program with Eugene for about 4 years now. So I'm very happy to be here. So question number one, what are the most important, in your view, what are the most important elements of crisis management or protecting the company's public image in this type of situation? Like, what is the top priority, and why do you think it's the top priority?
So for the top priorities, compliance is really important. So we did really dive into like the legal implications and stuff. And healthcare providers, must comply with data breaches and like the laws and regulations that come with it, including, notifying patients and following specific frameworks of law, because that's kind of going to show consumers and customers and potential partnerships that we are serious about the breach and that we are taking initiative. And for, public relations, it kind of shows, we want to improve and we don't want this to happen again. And that's kind of the steps to take, not to have customers forget, obviously, because that's not really what we want to put out, but kind of we are improving and we are a work in process. And, again, breaches, as you all know, you work in the cybersecurity industries, and they really are something that they could just happen anytime, anywhere. You don't know who's planning against, the companies. And, of course, public relations is so important to kind of reach out to the people who are on the external space to kind of tell them we're trying and we're looking for solutions to improve. And especially with breaches, we're going to try to overcome them and protect as much information as we can and, do our best to maintain that. Thank you.
Anyone want to add anything, or are we good?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to what my colleague Emily said. As she said, I think it's very important for the company to respond quickly and effectively, and to highlight the positive developments. So though there is a lot of negative when it comes to breaches, it's important to let their customers know that they're on top of everything and that they're going to ensure that this won't happen again.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
To what Bernie said. Yes. Okay, so as cybersecurity consultants, I think it's important to take a strategic approach and look at what other companies done. So there have been other large firms and even like tech companies that have faced like severe like cyber breaches, such as like Uber and Target. However, their reputation wasn't necessarily tainted, and they're still reputable businesses that people still trust and rely on. And given that this isn't a technology company, just like their assets and software isn't as like compromised as like other companies, so we do have some leeway because it is pharmaco, so it's like we're selling like pharmacy products. So I would say just like discreetly adding things such as like changing up the privacy policy and reaching out to like leading customers and like communication with them is going to be good. So we're not going to necessarily like slander our name and show like, oh, like we face like this data breach, but just to discreetly talk about improving like cybersecurity measures within the firm.
Thank you. Hey, Eugene, do you want to skip forward given that we have 5 minutes, or do you want me to go to the next question?
Let's skip the next one. Let's go to Rohan.
Hey guys, so my name is Rohan. I'm the Director for Systems Engineering here at Fortinet. So, as somebody said, I think Sakshi or Emily, one of you said that breaches are going to happen. We need to make sure that we move past that. So my question to you is twofold here. First, what do you think is the role of cybersecurity insurance in all of these? And for this specific case study, what do you think the next technical steps would be? I know Radhika asked about the technical thing, but I would like to know, like, there are 4 breaches that happen, like email theft, PHI theft, like, inject file, as well as oh my god, uh, uh, the server. So I would like to understand what would the technical steps would be, and the role of cyber insurance.
Okay, so I can kind of talk about cyber insurance. So the role of it basically of cybersecurity insurance is to kind of help organizations manage their potential financial risks associated with like a potential cybersecurity incident. So there's like different things, liability coverage, business interruption coverage. There's also data recovery coverage. So these are all kind of different aspects of like what a company can do to protect themselves in the case of a potential breach.
Do you think the cyber insurance has a role in deciding the technical recommendation for a company?
Potentially, yeah. It could definitely include different, I guess there could be different technical aspects, of course, but the insurance coverage does, of course, help with the technical things that could occur within a company.
And to add on to what Emily said, I think whenever you get cyber insurance, I think you have to meet some like minimum qualifications and in your company's security for the insurer to cover your company. And
Good
these
point.
insurance, what's that?
Good point. Good
Oh,
point.
thank you.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. And then to add on to, and then to like kind of complete the thing here, what we recommend after is definitely network segmentation again, and maybe some like Wi-Fi endpoint isolation, meaning like making sure that devices on the network can't exactly just hop onto other, like a malware spreading through the network can't spread to different devices on the network, and they're not able to spread malware as quickly and prevent viruses from moving laterally within the network.
Okay, and about ransomware, like there can be insider threats, there can be outsider threats. How would you? What are your recommendations related to that?
Can you repeat the question?
Ransomware can be an insider threat or an outsider threat. So, what is your recommendation with respect to that?
So for ransomware, you're right. It can be insider or outsider. We don't ever know. But it's important to have a layered approach when you're approaching security. Meaning, like, let's say a ransomware comes in from like email, right? Like, it comes from email. We can have like multiple layers, multiple scans that run through the email attachments, and we can have ransomware training awareness. I think Sashi can talk more about that. Ransomware awareness training, and to have like tools that scan your files, like incoming files, to verify that they're not in fact ransomware. And again, to have like devices segmented so that they're not like one computer affected with ransomware is like not great, but like 100 computers on a network affected with ransomware would just be like devastating for the company.
I was looking for the training. That's a very good point. Thank you. So
I think emphasize more about that. I believe she brought it up in the presentation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'd like to highlight that we wanted to use like the NIST cybersecurity framework approach. So within that, training is like a very important aspect. And cybersecurity isn't something that was super important to Pharmaco when evaluating like the case study. So just making sure that all employees are aware of like cybersecurity best practices. And what there is like a lot of like breaches and like malware that happen and like ransomware, but there's potential for other attacks to happen in the future, such as like social engineering, and just making sure that employees employees are continuously like aware of just best cybersecurity practices. So not opening up email attachments or files that they know can harm the computer and stuff like that. So it's important to continuously like stay updated, and just given like the structure of the organization and how like laterally like CISO didn't like interact with most of the C-suite, just making sure that we up the communication there, and cybersecurity is just taken more seriously throughout the firm.
Thank you so much, guys. And I think I'll move to Alex.
I think we actually ran out of time, so
Okay.
let's wrap up this interview. Guys, I want to thank you for your excellent performance today. I want to thank you for your case study analysis. Thank you so much for participation. Hopefully you'll come back next year, tell your friends about this competition. I'm hoping to get back to you within less than a week with the results, final results. And, it was hopefully a good experience for you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for the judges.
And good luck. Yep.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Goodbye.
Bye.